when we post the assignment, I usually try to give them about, if it's a conventional paper, I also use blogs and things like that, but if it's a conventional paper, I try to give them about 2 weeks. And I tell them that it does not mean that they have to work on it for 2 weeks, and ideally it means that they don't work on it the 2 hours before or the night before. When we post the assignment, I start talking about it. I go through it in great detail in class, and on my assignments I include the purpose of the assignment, the audience, and the sort of particular rules, format requirements. So I go through all of those, and also what we're looking for. So I start making my rubrics very explicit. So that's maybe about 10 to 15 minutes, and then invariably some Q&A. And then I ask the GSIs to spend some time in section sometime before it's due, not too early but also not right before, thinking about, again, this workshop model where they think about something like, okay, let's all write the first sentence of your paper. I have this sort of trade-off issue because in my classes, no single assignment is required of all. Students have choices. So I don't want to bore the students who feel like, okay, I'm not doing that. So that's partly why I also want to make the discussion sort of general, like this is a learning opportunity to think about this kind of thing academics do, whether you are writing this particular paper topic or not. I started grading writing many years ago thinking that, oh, writing is so subjective, rubrics are a stupid idea. No, they're not. And I think that we are using rubrics all the time in our heads anyway, and if we make them explicit to the students, some people might say, well, you're teaching to the test, as it were, if you give them the rubric, and if the rubric catches what you want them to do, then that's a feature and not a bug. What's really cool about coming up with a rubric, it's actually connected to coming up with a paper assignment. So when I think about, like I said, I always put on my prompt sheet, I say the purpose of this paper is X, Y, and Z, to develop an argument, close reading of a text, understanding an argument and counter-argument, paraphrase an argument, and so on. So I think about those purposes, and then I think about the rubrics, and so obviously the rubric should somehow track those things. So I think of the dimensions that we care about. And let me use an example which is a little easier. So in my intro class, students can also do group projects. And the thing about it is the group projects are completely unspecified. They could be anything. They could be videos, they could be music. One group a couple of years ago came up with a board game. I said, why not? And so if part of the idea is to be creative, then creativity is one dimension. So for the group projects, I had 3 dimensions of evaluation. One is creativity or innovation. Second is interpretation, and because it still has to deal with the material. So you could have a board game that claims to be about political theory, but it's not. And so how well does it do that? And then the third one is the execution. So you might say, I want to have a $4 million movie about Plato, but if you don't have $4 million or the time to do that, then that's not going to work out. So we have 3 dimensions of evaluation, and the same happens for all kinds of assignments. For paper, it's structure, it's argumentation, it's interpretation, and then writing. And the writing includes proper use of citations and things like that. And then we realize often, and each dimension exceeds expectations, meets expectations, and so on. And then we grade the papers, and then we see whether it worked, and we might tinker with it a little bit, and so on. And this has been really great.